Massive Arizona Cardinal news heading into the 2025 season. Jonathan Gannon giving us an update on rookie 16th overall pick Walter Nolen. We just got the list of the first cut downs for the Arizona Cardinals shaping the 53-man roster. And a very good wide receiver just hit the open trade market. All that and so much more. Let's get started. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back into another video. Definitely do me a huge favor, smack up that like button and subscribe for more Arizona Cardinals content. On this channel, we're covering the Arizona Cardinals news, breaking news, conversational pieces, everything surrounding your favorite team. So subscribe it up. It's absolutely for free. And don't be one of these guys that just love to hover around the channel. Just subscribe it up. It's absolutely for free, ladies and gentlemen. But let's go ahead and get started. Let's talk about all this massive news that we just got on the eve of the 53-man roster cutdown for the Arizona Cardinals heading into the 2025 season. Let's first start off with the updates here from our 16th overall pick in Walter Nolen. Now, we did make a video about this I believe it was earlier last week, and it came from obviously John Gamadoro putting out a prediction on the 53-man roster prediction for, Arizona sports, and he ended up coming out saying that Walter Nolen will not be available in the very first week of the 2025 season. And of course, it got a lot of Cardinal fans talking about, hey, he might not be available or not be ready to start week one. Now, here's the big question out there. Is Walter Nolen going to be available anytime between weeks 1 and week 4? Or are the Cardinals going to keep him on the PUP list, which means he's going to have to miss a total of 4 weeks to not even practice at all, right? So there's going to be a lot of questions, a lot of big storylines following what is happening with 16th overall pick in Walter Nolen. But this is the latest update that we ended up getting here from Darren Urban of the ArizonaCardinals.com. He ended up saying this: Gannon has no roster news yet. Said the whole list of roster moves will come out Tuesday afternoon. That's actually not true. We just already got the first wave of cuts that we're going to be talking about a little later on. And they also said that they had not yet decided on what to do with defensive lineman Walter Nolen III. If Walter is on the PUP list to start the season, that means no games or practices until after week 4. So this is going to be very intriguing. Like I mentioned a little earlier, the update is that the Cardinals still don't know what they're going to do with them. And we're talking about the final 53-man roster shaping the roster in 2025 tomorrow. So there is a lot of implication of what happens here with Walter Nolen. Is he not going to be available for 4 weeks? Well, we're going to have to find out here sooner rather than later. Of course, I would love for him to be removed off the PUP list so at least he can practice. Maybe we see him in week 2, week 3, or maybe even week 4. But definitely week 1 seems very, very murky as of right now for the Arizona Cardinals. So very unfortunate. I don't think this is going to be one of those Darius Robinson calf injuries. Now, yes, Walter Nolen does have a calf injury as well, but it looks like he's trending on the right direction a lot quicker than, Darius Robinson ended up. So fingers crossed that we're going to be seeing him sometime during this season, hopefully within the first 4 weeks. But as of right now, TBD. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the very first roster cutdowns for the Arizona Cardinals. Now, we mentioned this a little earlier when we talked about these this roster cutdowns, right? There's going to be a lot of players in the tail end of this roster that are really going to have to make a big name for themselves in preseason, right? Preseason, training camp. And for the most part, we saw a lot of guys that are 2s and 4s did a pretty good job, but the ugly nature of the NFL and the ugly side of the business is that it's a business at the end of the day. You got to trim this roster down to 53. So we already got the list of the very first waves for the cutdowns. And ladies and gentlemen, here it is. Let's first start off with wide receiver Andre Bocelli, which we had one of my followers here on Instagram said it best, right? He ended up saying practice squad legend Andre Bocelli, because he's always on the practice squad. Now, we ended up hearing that the Cardinals are actually waiving Andre Bocelli, which means that their intention is for him to come back to the practice squad if he's not claimed off of waivers. Now, usually he clears it and the Cardinals have no problem with having him in the practice squad, but at the end of the day, he was the very first person that I ended up hearing, and that was around 10 a.m. this morning. Now, another person to talk about, obviously, cornerback Boyday, right? Bode. I most likely butcher his name. Didn't really see a lot of them in training camp. I saw him as a player out there rolling with the 3s and 4s, but this is not really a shock to me. We do got tight end Oscar Cardenas right? But we ended up having him getting cut as well, unfortunately. And this kind of just goes to the thought that the tight end group that we currently have right now, we just got the top three that we're going to be rolling with, right? McBride, Tip Ryman, as well as Elijah Higgins, most likely going to be your top three. So when it comes down to Oscar Cardenas, it's probably going to be one of those things that's he's just not needed, right? He's not needed on this roster. And, all we can say is thanks for the services and all the hard work he's put in training camp, or at least for all the guys that we're going to be talking about here soon. Now, next guy is going to be offensive lineman McClendon Curtis. Another cut there. And then cornerback Stephen Gilmore. We made a video about Stephen Gilmore, and this is very unfortunate, specifically because the Cardinals did lose a lot of cornerbacks with Sean Murphy-Bunting as well as Starling Thomas V. It gives an opportunity for those other young guys like Elijah Jones, Darren Hall, to kind of really put a name for themselves, even Stephen Gilmore. And unfortunately, he didn't make the cut. He was part of the first wave of cuts for the Cardinals. And now we move on to the next guy, defensive lineman Patrick Jenkins. Yeah, a lot of these guys we haven't really seen very much in preseason or even training camps. So a lot of these guys aren't a shock, right? Next guy is going to be linebacker V. Jones. Next guy, offensive lineman Roy Mbekta, right? We just signed him not too long ago. It was probably less than a week ago. He's probably a practice squad guy or a camp body, right? And maybe a preseason guy, right? To somebody to kind of throw out there. And unfortunately, he didn't last more than 2 weeks for the Cardinals. Next up is going to be wide receiver Nate McCollum, which had a crazy catch in preseason, but we know how it all kind of shakes out. We're going to keep playing tune for last. Offensive lineman Donovan West, we just signed him 2 weeks ago as well. Unfortunately, didn't really last with the Cardinals. And then linebacker Benton Wintley. Now, last person, quarterback Clayton Tune. The experiment is over, is what it seems like. The experiment of Clayton Tune is officially over. And now we most likely, like we all talked about for days now, maybe even weeks, they're rolling with two quarterbacks, right? Now, can the Cardinals potentially dip their toes in another quarterback that gets released? Potentially, right? Or we can be living in a world where Clayton Tune just goes to the practice squad and he kind of runs with the practice squad guys. That can be a real possibility as well. But as of right now, he is released. Maybe once he clears waivers, we might have a real world scenario where he's going to be a practice squad guy for the Cardinals. But yes, this is going to be the very first wave of cut downs for the Arizona Cardinals heading into the 2025 season. It is a very sad day for a lot of these players that do give their blood, sweat, and tears and pretty much give it their all, right, to make a 53-man roster spot. But it's tough. When you're really looking at the depth chart for the Cardinals and you really break it down, you really only have like 4 or 5, 6 empty spots. And 6 is because if Walter's not available, or if B.J. Ojulari's not available, or even Bilal Nichols is not available, then that becomes like 6, 7, or 8 empty spots. But there's not very many empty spots for this Arizona Cardinal roster. And this is kind of the unfortunate side of it all when it comes down to players really trying to make a cut. But hey, we appreciate it. We absolutely do appreciate it. Let's move on over to the next thing that I really want to talk about. If you guys do not know, we ended up seeing some breaking news that dropped earlier this morning, and that is that Jakobi Meyers. Breaking news dropped out of the Vegas Raiders camp saying that Jakobi Meyers wants out of Las Vegas. It seems like they were going through some sort of negotiations with a contract extension, and it didn't really go very well. So Jakobi Meyers, just like other players that has been doing all this year, right, this offseason, went through the trade market and tried to see if he can force the hand of the Vegas Raiders. So this is an intriguing player. I'm not going to lie to you. This is such an intriguing player. And for a team that really went with the foundation of let's run it back with the same wide receiving core, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm looking this way at Jakobi Meyers, and I'm pretty darn intrigued if I'm going to be real with you. Played with two teams, right? With the Raiders as well as the New England Patriots. And for the most part, if you're looking at his stats, even in his rookie year, he had pretty solid numbers, right? Now, his rookie year wasn't anything great or crazy, but 359 yards. He followed a sophomore year of 729 yards and 0 touchdowns. But this is when the touchdowns started happening in 2021. In his third year, 866 yards, 2 touchdowns. Patriots, last year with them, He ended up having 804 yards, 6 touchdowns with the Raiders in the last 2 years. In 2023, he was 807 yards, 8 touchdowns. And then this last year in 2024, he had over 1,000 yards and 4 touchdowns with the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, those organizations, they are not the best when it comes down to, I guess, having depth and all the talent in the world. So hearing Jakobi Meyers wants out kind of perked my ears up a little bit, right? Now, we heard the news that he wanted out probably around noon today. And then we ended up seeing a tweet here from Josina Anderson saying this. I'm told several teams already have interest in wide receiver Jakobi Meyers, pending Las Vegas growing inclined to move him, per league sources. Now, we did see a story that followed saying that the Raiders have no interest in trading Jakobi Meyers, right? We already heard that, but everybody's got a price. Everybody's got a price on the situation. So are we, as the Arizona Cardinal fan base, and I'm not talking about Monty Ossenfort. We all know that Monty Ossenfort has not made a big move or anything like that, but this kind of seems like a Monty Ossenfort move where you're not going to have to give up a first rounder, a second rounder, third rounder, or potentially talking about a fourth round pick or maybe a fifth round pick in a player if you want to package something up and kind of throw it on over to the Las Vegas Raiders. But this is a player that can be a solid number 2 wide receiver. And within the last 3 years or even 4 years, he had over 800 yards in 4 different years, right? 866 in 2021, 800 in 2022, 807 in 2023, and then over 1,000 in 2024. And that was with the Patriots and the Raiders. This can be a real player that the Arizona Cardinals can bring in sneakily and absolutely upgrade their wide receiving core. Now, what happens if the Cardinals did this, right? Do we kick out, Michael Wilson to the number 3 wide receiver? I mean, we can still keep him as a number 2 on the outside and maybe move Jakobi Meyers on the inside. I know he's more of an outside guy, but I'm going to leave that over to Drew Petzing if Monty Ossenfort ends up pulling the trigger. But hearing the fact that there was several teams calling about, hey, what's the gauge on this, kind of got me really excited because this can be a player the Arizona Cardinals can absolutely bring onto the roster and upgrade their wide receiving core tremendously. It's not going to all be Marvin Harrison Jr., save this wide receiving core. You're bringing a solid number 2 wide receiver with probably a 4th round pick, maybe a 4th rounder and a player, maybe a 5th rounder and a player. But I doubt he goes for more than anything than a 4th round pick, if I'm going to be real here. But I mean, we can be surprised. But this is a real intriguing player for the Arizona Cardinals to potentially have their eyes on. Let me know what your overall thoughts. Are you in on a Jakobi Meyers? Let me know here in the comments below. Appreciate y'all for tuning in as always. Have a great rest of your day and go Cardinals.